There's a guy coming through line. He'll give you your advance ticket in just a minute. He'll be right here.
Come on, you said you do this one. Thank you.
I see where you're going. We dropped this.
Give it a couple minutes.
It's 2 o'clock something.
Okay.
Have a seat, make yourself comfortable. All right, you want a question? You want a hard question? You want a hard question?
Oh my
Answer yes. In Star Trek 4, did you see that?
One guy looks really good.
Okay, good choice. In Star Trek 4, what bus number was it that Kirk
That's network.
and Spock got on?
I want a copy of this for sure.
What's your favorite Star Trek episode?
To sponsor a Star Trek convention, what do you think? Well, if you think so, I think there's a good chance we'll be back next year. Would you like that? And we really appreciate the turnout today. And let me say, you know, as long as we have good turnouts on a yearly basis, and maybe this might tell us something now, we'll bring in a kind of a more, maybe a contemporary star or something like that. What do you think about William Shatner, ladies and gentlemen? Even though he doesn't do autographs? Sure. Okay. Because at Trek-A-Ramas, we always like to work with our stars that do autographs. And most of the next generation does not. The only ones of next generation that do autographs, dependently, that is Marina Sirtis. She's about the only one. Jonathan Frakes does not do autographs. Data does not do autographs unless he charges you $17 a hit. And let's see, Beverly Crusher does not do autographs. John Delancey does autographs. How many saw John Delancey in Springfield? Raise your hand. Good for you guys. We were also in Fort Smith. Anyone at Fort Smith this past summer? We did. We had Mr. Delancey there also. Yesterday we were in Joplin, Missouri. We're going to try to stick as close to the schedule as possible, simply because there's one flight out today from Columbia, and that is at 6, and every one of our stars that are speaking today is on that same flight to St. Louis. So we're going to try to stay on schedule as much as possible. Right now, I wanted to share a little bit of Star Trek gossip with you before we have Miss Curtis come on. In the next couple of months, that is a rumor, but it's pretty well substantiated. Another rumor also concerning Counselor Troy and Marina Sirtis was that in the next Star Trek film, which comes out next year, was going to kill off Counselor Troy, ladies and gentlemen. Well, when that reached the ears of one Major Barrett Roddenberry, she got up, went to Paramount, and raised heck with one Rick Berman. Guess what? It's not going to happen. At least for now, anyway. We were hoping it would be in November, during November rating sweeps, but it looks like it might be January or maybe even February. Robin Curtis is here, ladies and gentlemen. Give her a hand.
Ready to do autographs for the next hour, but I'm supposed to be talking to you. Now, there was a gentleman who came up that I signed for from Red Comic Books. Is he in the audience? He left a bag at the table. Does anybody, does that sound familiar? All right, we'll find them later. No problem. You know, I'm gonna get on stage so we can all see each other. Hold on. How about? Hi! I'm so glad to be here. I don't know, were any of you in Joplin and came all the way up to... Thank you for coming, really. That's the first and only time that's ever happened in 12 years. Do you believe it's been 12 years? Oh,
what setting are you using?
I got on a plane yesterday morning at 6:35 a.m. in Los Angeles, and that plane didn't go anywhere for 5 hours. And I might have tried to have done something about it, but you know, when you're in that situation, you've got a whole plane load of people, they're all in the same predicament, all wanting to get where they're going, and meanwhile, we're getting reports in half-hour increments, so
not bad.
At any moment, I thought we were going to take off, but those half-hour increments kept adding up, and finally it's 5 hours later, and I might have tried to have gotten on a plane 4 hours earlier if I'd known that one wasn't going anywhere for 5 hours, but they kept leading us to think, well, any minute, those mechanics will have taped that door shut and we'll go, you know, but anyway, I'm a bit of a nervous flyer, so I felt very good when the pilot came over the sound system and said, you know, I know you're all cranky and hungry and tired and of waiting, as are we, but we will not take off until the plane is pronounced safe. And I said, yeah, that's a good thing. I'm one of those people that thinks turbulence is going to make the wings snap off. You know, there's no rationale to why I think that. It's just that I don't understand it. In fact, every time I buy a ticket at whatever airline desk I'm at, I always say, do you people have a stress reduction class? Is there some kind of, you know, because they do, they have. I called in one of the magazines when they announced it, but then it had been canceled. The outgoing message on the Aiden River was, we no longer offer this class. It would help me tremendously to know how the plane works so that I wouldn't be so nervous. But anyway, I'm so glad to be here. I'm so thrilled to be here. I've had such good times in Missouri. I've been to Cape Girardeau and had the most wonderful hosts down there several years back, and I've been in St. Louis since then, and it's just great to be here again. I am very informal, for those of you who have been with me before in these magical hours that we spend together. I like to make it about what you want to talk about. I'm not shy. I can't think of anything I wouldn't want to discuss with you, from the personal end of things to the more professional end of things. I've been real busy in recent weeks. I've actually been working, which is like a miracle. I'm the contingent, the Star Trek contingent that spends most of her time unemployed and looking for work. So I know what the rest of the country feels like. Yeah, I mean, I would just assume that we get into areas that you want to talk about. So if you could find your courage and raise your hand and just sort of give us a place to start, let's go for it. Yes, sir.
Yeah, how do you feel about Christy Alley getting her likeness on the action figure and not you?
Is there a Saavik action figure?
Yes.
Well, damn it, it's about time. and if it's Kirstie Alley, so be it. Can I tell you, I have not received one nickel in all the years since on any of the merchandise. So, you know, hell, it really wouldn't matter financially, at least one way or another, whose face was on it. She looks lovely. Good for her. Good for her. No, I'm just glad to see finally Saavik has one. This is fairly new, correct?
Just came out about a month ago.
Good, good, good. All the more power to us. Yeah, thank you, thank you. I really, that doesn't bother me at all. It doesn't bother me at all. Yes?
I want to comment to you on something.
Okay.
As far as playing Lieutenant Saavik on Star Trek 3, you did it down and dirty, let me tell you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I wonder what Leonard would say if you said that. You know, he directed me to within an inch of my life in that part. I remember I shook his hand the day we began shooting. It was an 8-week shoot back in the fall of 1983. And in fact, we wrapped right about now, it seems to me, as I remember, early November of '83. And yeah, he shook my hand and I said to him, Mr. Dean, you seem to think I know what I'm doing, but I don't have a clue. And he said, Robin, I will take you every step of the way. You know, I will never, in fact, I think the metaphor he used, or the image he used, was that I would never take you out to the end of a branch and leave you hanging there all by yourself. And so consequently, that's exactly what he did. We would sit down sort of in a quiet corner of the set before every scene, and he'd say, okay, let's hear it. and we would work through it together, and he directed me so very closely, which is why I find it interesting when you guys have a very strong opinion one way or another about whether or not the character cried or didn't cry or was more emotional or less emotional. I don't know. I mean, certainly the actress has something to do with it, but it's very much, that kind of part is very much a collaboration between a director and an actress, and I felt very strongly, you know, who was I to argue with the King Vulcan? You know, you know, if he thought a line should be interpreted a certain way, that was fine with me. I wasn't about to you know, push my weight on something like that with him. And so apparently Nicholas Meyer had a different, kind of a different take on Saavik than Lenard did, and I was very happy to go with Lenard's version of things. Yes?
Why wasn't Lieutenant Saavik in more of Star Trek 4? I would have liked to have seen her go with everybody.
He wants to know why wasn't Lieutenant Saavik in more of Star Trek 4, and he'd like to have seen her go with everybody. So would I. You know, I'm still stuck on that rock with Jane Wyatt. Please, come back. You know, I did a convention last year, as I recall, in Ohio, and they were going to, it was a big one with a lot of guests, and so they were going to double us up on stage, and I was going on, and I said to the promoters, I said, you know, that can be, sometimes that can be problematic, because what you end up with are three actors all trying to be polite with each other, or one actor's getting more questions from the audience than the others, and we end up not really embellishing stories because we don't want to take a lot of time, selfish stage time. I said, so try to find a theme. I said, try to find a reason to connect those of us on stage rather than just haphazardly scheduling three of us who didn't work together or whatever, or don't have something in common on the stage together at the same time. So we decided to put Jonathan Del Arco, who played Hugh, is it Hugh the Borg? And, oh God, I'm blanking on her name. Real ballsy gal. Oh gosh, she plays the character with a sort of a, looks like a Mason's hat on. Oh God, you know, the little gal, and she's got a mug of a face. Oh God, and she's a friend of mine. She's from New York. Anyway, the thing. I'm just totally blanking on her name. I've lost a few brain cells this week. I've been working nights, and my agent sent me out during the day, and I thought, well, when do you people think I'm sleeping? But anyway, the one thing that the three of us had in common was, as Jonathan Del Arco so beautifully put it, we were left on planets like turds. And this is how we were announced to the audience. We got dumped on planets like turds. Very attractive, very attractive. And I will come up with her name before the hour's over. But that kind of says it all. I feel badly that I didn't go along too. Although, you know, let's face it, the Star Trek formula I felt was most beautifully exemplified in Star Trek 4. And there's only so many pieces of the pie. And you start to put too many characters into a story, and the story is diluted. It isn't as good. And I was very happy to see people like, you know, the regular cast, Jimmy Doohan and George Takei and so forth, get their moment, you know, and have more to do and more to say. And I think that was best exemplified to me by the different moods on the set. Star Trek 3, now granted, everything died in 3, the planet, the ship, my youth, it was Spock in the cave, yeah, there was a seriousness on that set. People were not having as much fun, if I can simplify it that way. But on 4, just the couple of days that I worked on 4, the mood was very celebratory. Everybody seemed like they were really happy to come to work, and there was a buoyancy about people's personalities. I can't explain it. It was really wonderful to see, and I think it had a lot to do with the fact that the script was good, the story was good, they brought the humor back, and if that meant that I had to stay on Vulcan with Jane Wyatt, so be it. You know. Yes, sir. You go ahead.
What was your favorite episode of Lives that you worked in?
Oh, that I worked in? Well, I didn't work in that many, to be honest with you, sweetie. He wants to know what was my favorite episode. I mean, I really enjoyed doing The Next Generation. I was really thrilled that the organization threw me a bone, you know, finally in the 6th season, and it had a little meat on it. Because I had auditions for the show. You know, you guys for years had said to me, when are you going to be on The Next Generation? Like, all that was required was for me to put in a call to Rick Berman and just tell him I wanted to be on the show. And I can't tell you how far from the truth that is. Just like any other actress in Hollywood, and believe me, I auditioned against all kinds of all types. You know, for instance, one audition I was up against Susan Anton. And you know, we're really not all that similar, except we're sort of big gals with big teeth. But you know, in other words, I worked hard to get on that show to some extent. In fact, I remember that whole event, because I think this was now maybe the third or fourth time I had auditioned for the show. I went in on a Tuesday at 10 o'clock in the morning. I got the sides the day before. Now the sides are what they're willing to show you in terms of the part. You know, they'll give you a couple of scenes to prepare. Those are called sides. And that's the actor's homework. And based upon what you can glean from the sides about the character, you bring in the best presentation of that character in those two scenes that you can. And so I got the sides, and I noticed that the description, the part they were having me read for was Vulcon, which was a very, very, very tall alien woman. And I thought, well, you know, by Hollywood standards, I'm not really that tall. But what I could glean from what they had given me in sides was that there was this other part. It had looked to be a much bigger part, named Talera. And I thought, you know, I'd like to read for that part. I feel more right that part. So I called my agents and said, what do you think? Do you think they would mind seeing me or reading me for Talera as well, or only for Talera? And so my agents called up, and Paramount said, that's fine. So I went in and I read for both characters that day. And the people in the room, by the way, folks, are poker face. They don't give you anything. You know, you go in, there isn't any chit-chat, it's not how you been, Robin, and all that kind of thing. You just, hello, this is Robin Curtis, you read. And it's about as stiff and you know, unflowery as that, an encounter. I did my reading, nobody gave a response. It was just sort of nodding, smiling, thank you, I walked out. I didn't have a clue what they thought of what I had done. I go about my day, and the word at the end of the day on Tuesday from my agents is, well, it's good and it's bad. They love you, but they're going to read more people tomorrow. Well, obviously they didn't love me enough, quite enough. So I decide that I have to get through the evening now, not knowing if I'm going to get this part. And I'm a little tense. I'm a little tense, I'm a little anxious. And because this means a lot to me. And I would really like to do The Next Generation because it would sort of enliven my experience with all of you. And you know, it's new stuff to dish, and new things to talk about, and new people to get to know, and all that stuff. And I thought it would refresh my whole connection to Star Trek. And stop that question, when are you going to be on The Next Generation, you know, kind of thing. Well, I had to go to bed on it, got up the next morning, went to this fairly mundane audition for a breakfast cereal. I don't know, you know, one of those things where people talk about the most inane things over breakfast, and husband and wife over the grape nuts or whatever. And I get out of my car, park it, come around the side of the entrance to the building, and there is this guy that broke up with me just a few months prior. Actually, I broke up with him. Of course, it doesn't really matter. But he had, for the most part, broken my heart. He had decided that his career was the most important thing, and that he couldn't make the certain sacrifices given my age and his age and my desire to have children and all that baloney. Anyway, you know, he's standing there in an Armani suit, looking gorgeous, and I'm like, hi, Kevin, how are you? And he's like, Robin, nice to see you, dee-dee-dee. And he said, let's get together. I said, fine, how about next week? And he lands the information on my head that no, he can't get together for lunch next week because he's going to New York to be with his new girlfriend because she has just gotten a New York audition for a play or some such thing. And I'm thinking, oh, how quickly things change. He's willing to walk away from his career and go be with her and be a support system in New York for her career. You know, do you ever feel that way, ladies? Like you sort of suffer through the worst of it with a guy and then sent him on, and the next gal gets the goods, or you know, he's learned the lesson by then, and she reaps the rewards. So, you know, I was like, well, gee, Kev, you know, call me when you get back from New York. And I go into the audition, and the very first person I see standing there in all of her tall glory is an actress by the name of Caitlin Brown. And we've known each other over the years because we are of similar type. We're sort of both tall and dark. Caitlin's got a lot of energy, and she loves to talk about the business. And the first words out of her mouth are, "Did you get Star Trek?" And I'm thinking, now how does she know? I'm sort of waiting on pins and needles right now, and I'm a little on edge, you know, to hear about that. And I thought, oh, of course. I went in yesterday at 10 o'clock in the morning, and by law, by union rules, you have to sign in. You have to sign in your name and your social security number and what time you arrived, and then you have to sign what time you left. And that way, if they've kept you over an hour, you get a little bitty paycheck or something for $30 for the time that they kept you there. I thought, oh, okay, Caitlin must have gone in on this audition yesterday, and she saw my name signed in earlier in the day on the timesheet. Well, I said, Caitlin, I don't know yet. I haven't heard. Meanwhile, I'm waiting, and I'm thinking, I've got a 50-50 shot here. I'm waiting for 2 different parts, not just one, V-Corps and Talera. And the next words out of her mouth are, well, I just wondered because I got V-Corps. And it's like, I'm like, oh, geez, Caitlin, that's great. Good for you. The boyfriend, Caitlin's got the job, and now I'm thinking it's only Talera, and now my hands are shaking. I go over to meet with the guy that I'm going to do the little audition with for the serial. And he's like, somebody that I've known in the audition trenches, and he's like, how you doing, Robin? I'm like, I'm not very good at all. And he said, first I bumped into the old boyfriend in the street, and I'm waiting to hear about Star Trek. And Caitlin got the part, and now there's only one part left, and oh God, and they're making me wait, and I hate this. And he's like, it'll be okay, it'll be okay. So I got it together enough to go in and do this dark audition. And then I came out, and I went over to a friend's house. We were supposed to go computer shopping, and the minute he opened the door, and there was that warm, friendly, loving face, I was just like, oh, Ron, I'm having the worst day. I'm waiting to hear about Star Trek, and it's been 6 years I'm waiting to get on that show, and I don't even know. He's like, call your agent. I said, good idea. So I called so I got on the phone to my agent, and I get the assistant, and I'm like, Leslie, I said, just, don't pay any attention to me. I'm just having a bad day, and this is very emotional for me. I said, just get Renee on the phone. I want to talk about Star Trek. And she's like, it's okay, hang on, I'll get Renee. Renee comes on the line, she's like, Robin, I know this is primal for you. I'm thinking, Renee, you're brilliant at this. It's primal. It goes back to the beginning of time. I want to be on Star Trek so bad. And they're making me wait. And she's like, Robin, I'll call over there right now. I said, great. She calls over, they're at lunch. It's 1 o'clock, they're at lunch. I won't know till 3 o'clock. I finally get a call. I'm home now. I'm trying to contain myself. And she calls up and she's like, Robin, you got it. And I'm like, oh, thank God. I normally have this, like, I don't know what it is. It's a cross between a squeal and a body flail and a jig. And I don't know, it's a combination of all 3 when I'm told I got a job. No cynic me. I still feel like I'm that little girl from upstate New York when somebody says to me, that I actually got a job and they wanted me, and it's such a wonderful, happy, thrilling moment. But that particular day, much less than being thrilled, I was just relieved. I practically fainted to the floor. I thought, finally. And meanwhile, now, because they keep making new shows, now you guys are asking me, when am I going to be on Deep Space Nine? And when am I going to be on, Generations? And when am I going to be on Voyager? And it's like, enough already, enough. I'm trying. It's funny, they wouldn't even see me for the captain on Voyager. My agents tried very hard, maybe not hard enough. And I never did get to the bottom of that, what that was about, why they wouldn't see me. Maybe, because I had been a part of Star Trek already or whatever, but it just seemed like every actress, and most of these women are my friends because I've seen them over the years. We keep encountering each other in waiting rooms and so forth. Women like Caitlin Brown and a lot of great ladies, lovely ladies, and I go into these waiting rooms thinking, any one of us could do this part well, and it's just going to be a crapshoot as to who gets it. But so many of my friends had gone in on the captain that I started to really feel like it was a vendetta against me. It's like, why can't I come in? My friend over here, who I see all the time, but this one and so forth, they all waited in line on me. But for some reason, they wouldn't see me. Yes, the rough road to Hollywood. Yes, go ahead, darling. You want to know if it's true that Saavik was half Romulan, but it wasn't in the movie. Well, I think that's the point I'm trying to make with you, that she is supposedly half Romulan, half Vulcan, and I think that Kirstie Alley's interpretation was sort of gave you a flavor of both of those races, whereas my interpretation was strictly Vulcan. And I think that Lenard was the one that felt very strongly about that it be that way. So it kind of just depends on which actress you're talking about playing which, playing the character at which point. Someone else. Yes, lovely. We've got Klingons invading. Oh my God, they're going to give me something. You look fabulous, by the way. Thank you. This is a Klingon Vulcan half-breed. This one. Okay, lovely. Thank you. First ever. What have you got, sweetie?
Our group had put together an unofficial intergalactic cookbook that has many delicious but disgusting recipes in it from all over the universe. And on one of the pages, there is a very nice recipe for Vulcan veggies. since Vulcans are traditionally vegetarians, and we would like you to have a copy of it as a thank you for being here with us.
This doesn't sound so gross.
They look gross. They look gross, the names may sound gross, but they're delicious.
Trill symbiote.
And I promise they... Wait till you find the troublesome bits.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed that immensely. Thanks, darling. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Really. Someone else. Go ahead, Libby. No, you go ahead. I'm talking to you. I'm sorry. Lovely. When I was growing up, did I always envision I would be an actress, or was this sort of something that came along that I want to be something else? I always wanted to be a cop. I wanted to be a nurse or a cop when I was a kid. No, I did not grow up yearning to be an actress since I was a little girl. My mother put me in dance classes, and the best thing I could come up with at the first recital was to have my hand jammed down my tutu and coming out the leg like that, and I was waving at the audience. And she thought that was pretty ridiculous and yanking me out of dance classes. I was one of those kids that always had the biggest mouth, or at least could be heard when I did speak by the whole class. So I always read the film strips in school, and you know, I enjoyed doing that. I didn't have a lot of inhibition about doing those kinds of things. And so consequently, when the school musicals came up, it was always, you know, put Robin Curtis in the chorus, that way everybody will be heard, kind of thing. I sang in the church choir. It was really music that brought me to acting or to theater. My mother was a music teacher, and I still to this day love music and would love very much to get back to it. But yeah, no, I became an actress. I went to 4 years of college, and a very quick process of elimination determined that that was all I knew how to do. Even if I did it poorly, it was all I did well. But up until that point, I had only perceived it as another extracurricular school activity that I really enjoyed. I loved student government. I loved sports. So yeah, I became an actress trepidatiously, and not without a lot of love and support from a very good friend of mine who was a couple of years older than I was, had gone to Boston University, grew up in the same kind of community. I grew up in Utica, Rome, New York, that area in the Mohawk Valley in upstate New York. And he had gone to New York out of college and was now on a soap. So he was the big success story, you know, from our neck of the woods. And we were great friends, and he had come to see me doing my last summer of dinner theater in upstate New York. You know, where people eat while you're doing the play kind of thing. And he said, Robin, you've got to come to New York. And up until that point, it was the last play. I had graduated from college, so it was like late August, and I still didn't know what I was going to do with myself in September. Was I going to go home to Utica, New York and become a secretary for Utica Mutual Insurance Company? Or was I going to, you know, take my chances and go to the city, the big bad city? You know, us folks from upstate New York perceived New York City as the big bad town, you know, and people were scared for me. But I had traveled to Europe my last semester in college, and I thought, well, gosh darn it, if I can make my way around Europe, poor as a church mouse, you know, a mere student traveling the third, fourth, you know, highest, lowest class you can travel, sleeping with the chickens on the floor of a train kind of thing, and make my way through countries where I didn't speak the language and so forth. Why can't I do it in my own backyard? So I think it's interesting, you know, whatever adventures you choose to partake in life, I think that sometimes the cumulative effect of those adventures is what's allowing you or giving you the confidence or the security to do the things you do today. I mean, I feel now that I'm in a relationship. I met somebody really special. In fact, it was Rick Starnes that took me to New Orleans earlier this year, and I met someone the Saturday evening while I was in town that is going to come to California and live with me, and I have no doubt that we'll be life partners together. And I never dreamed I could be that happy. I'm 39 years old, and for some reason, children and having children, you know, that experience had eluded me in life, and I couldn't understand why, because the truth is, that's all I've ever really wanted. You know, someone who didn't know me very well several years back said, well, you know, when I was bemoaning my personal life and what was missing in it and what I had wanted so much, she said, well, you know, you chose a career. And I thought, you know, she doesn't know what the heck she's talking about. Women don't. You know, I venture to say men or women don't choose careers. We've got to work. You know, who was going to pay my bills all these years? somebody else. You know, I don't have a sponsor off in the corner. You know, the notion that she thought I had chosen a career over a personal life just was ludicrous and absurd to me. I really am thankful that I get to do what I do and enjoy what I do, but I never meant to choose it above all other life experiences. You know, that wasn't my intention at all. It just happened to turn out that way. And my point is I'm in a relationship now, and I feel as though just the things we've been through since March, because it's a long distance relationship. I'm in LA and he's in New Orleans. I feel as though all of the other loves that I've lost have made me a better partner in this relationship. So those of you who think that love has eluded you, or that there isn't something to be gleaned from a relationship that didn't work out, there's something to be learned, there's a lesson to be gotten, and you will carry it forward, and you will be that much more of a person to love, to be loved, and to love another later on. You know, I just feel so good right now to be me, and it's probably because I've lost a lot of things along the way. So losing isn't such a bad thing. It's good. You gain in the long run. You really do. Someone else. I don't think I got a woman raise a hand. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, thanks.
Go ahead, darling. It's because you're so pretty.
You talk about, you know, this being a job and, you know, and all
Uh-huh.
that. Were you a Star Trek fan before you took the job?
Well, it's funny, there was a lady over here that asked me, or someone asked me what my favorite Star Trek episode was. But he's asking me, was I a fan of Star Trek before I got the job? And I must confess I was not. I didn't have a clue that this phenomena was so, that it existed, that it was so vast, that you guys were all out there changing the face of Star Trek. You brought it back into movie form. You know, you wrote your letters, and they shot their first movie and their second movie. So no, I really wasn't. It wasn't the sort of thing. I mean, I remember I went to Star Wars 2 just to see Yoda, and I fell asleep. I missed him completely by that point in the movie. For some reason, when there's too much technology being thrown at me, I just sort of go away. So no, it's not my first choice. But I have come to really respect and admire it since then. And when I think of my favorite episode, I go back to the original series. My first impressions of the original series are probably far away from what your impressions were. And maybe it says something about where my head was at that time, or my age, but I was probably, when did the first series come out? 1960, 1963? 1966, okay, so I was 10 years old, pre-pubescent, you know, pre-hormonal, all that stuff, and I'm saying that because my first impressions of that show were very erotic ones. It just seemed to me that, you know, that every week there was this gorgeous, you know, intergalactic, futuristic blonde bombshell with hair up to here and breasts to there and her miniskirt to here, you know, exposing herself to Kirk. You know, Jim, I've got the disease too. I was waiting to see, you know, who was going to end up with who. You know, when Marion Hartley and Leonard Nimoy are in that cave, I'm going, stay, Leonard, stay. Oh my God, you got the, you know, the skin of the animal, the fur, and you've got Marriott, and what else could you want, you know, and for the rest of your life, you know, and oh my God, it's my favorite episode, Plato's Stepchildren. Come on, that's been fodder for my fantasies for years. Yeah, I mean, you know, the fact that Gene Roddenberry had the vision to put the first interracial kiss on television and to break lines, you know, racial lines and all that good stuff, right over my head. Right over my head. I'm 10, 11, 12 years old. Those are not the things I'm thinking about. The things I'm thinking about are, oh my God, that person over there, for his or her pleasure, is making those two people do things over there that they kind of don't want to do, but maybe kind of do want to do. Wow! This is some sick, perverted, fabulous stuff. So meanwhile, a pool of spittle is forming on the living room floor, you know, because this young girl who's reading romance magazines. I mean, I used to go to the local sundry shop on Main Street. I grew up in a town, by the way, of 3,000 people. The mayor pumped gas. Okay, so we're talking small. And there was this store on Main Street, oh God, what was the name of it? I'm blanking, damn it, but it doesn't matter. And I used to sneak in there, and I didn't sneak in, but I went in and was absolutely embarrassed and mortified that the thing I would walk out with was a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup and a love magazine or a comic book or a romance comic book. Those were the things. I was just absolutely, when I was in those years of my life, I was practicing kissing on my arm till it was raw. I mean, I hadn't been kissed yet, but I just always imagined Douglas Lenard would get off his mini bike one day and, you know, lay a big fat wet one on me. Of course, it doesn't work out like that. You know, it's not like that at all. It's nothing like you imagine it to be. But oh my God, I was just consumed by love and wanting love and love, 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 love. And of course, I didn't have a clue what it was. And it came much later. But those are my first impressions of Star Trek. Just how incredibly sexy and erotic everybody on the show was, and all this tension and yearning and stuff. And it kind of fit right into how I was developing at the time. You know, but no, listen, all joking aside, and those impressions are my honest ones, really. Since then, since I've become associated with it for life, thank God, and I am so thankful, you all have really been the ones to teach me about this great man and his great vision. In fact, I usually take some time, and then I stopped doing it because I've been doing it for a couple of years at the cons, to pay tribute to Gene Roddenberry. I have come to have such admiration for the man, and now of course I have a much more insight as to what those original episodes were about, and the things that he was trying to say, and the message that he was putting out there. And I'm not surprised any longer about why Star Trek is such an enduring, lasting, I almost think of it as a belief system. You know, it makes sense to me. Why shouldn't we hearken to something that is so positive? I think there are a lot worse things we could be doing on a Saturday and a Sunday than you know, to be here together and to be looking toward the future in a positive light. This whole notion of IDIC, I felt, you know, several years back when I was trying to formulate, you know, who am I politically, or how do I feel about myself in relation to the world? You know how we all start to think that way, and we start to think, you know, I should volunteer in my community. There's more to life than just me and my little world. I need to participate in the world and find my place in it, and how do I fit, and how responsible am I for my neighbor and the hard times he's having. I mean, we all kind of go through that time where we question all those things, and I felt like IDIC, you know, hit it right on the head for me. Infinite diversity and infinite combinations. You know, this whole idea, because I used to think to myself, yes, we all are alike, but we're not. Yes, we're as humans, we are brothers and sisters, but we're not the same. You know, I don't know why everybody gets all crazy about having you know, African American studies and Asian studies and so forth in colleges and campuses and stuff, and having all religions introduced in elementary schools or in any schools anywhere. I think that we should be exposed to how differently we are in the world. You know, the myriad of choices that one can make in the way that they choose to live spiritually or politically. And I think those differences should not be squashed. I think they should be celebrated and explored and learned about before we all become this homogenous, monogamous, did I say that? this you know, homogenous, monotonous world. I think we have to have the differences. So it kind of helped me with that. It kind of helped me sort out, yeah, we are alike, but we're not, and I dig that we're not. You know, how boring life would be, how dreadful the world would be if you were coming at you when you went down the street every day. You know, if you were across the counter from you in the bank and in the restaurants, and you know. So anyway, so I celebrate, although I'm not a viewer or a reader of literature, science fiction literature and movies, I celebrate the ideals highly, greatly. Yes, sir.
Are you going to be on movies of Star Trek?
Well, honey, your guess is as good as mine. He's asking, am I going to be in future movies of Star Trek? I would venture to say, given that almost, 4 movies now have gone by without my presence, that the chances are not good. The chances are not very good. I would not hold my breath on that one, but I certainly, if the opportunity came, I would jump on it. I would be thrilled. Yes?
As both Saavik and Tolera, we couldn't really see your face. What else have you been in that we can see your work and see your face?
Aren't you kind? I know, it did seem to me there for a while that you know, the next part I got, I would have a paper bag over my head with two little slits. I mean, Lori's Babylon 5, I don't know, for some of you with a very good eye, you might have seen me in that. I mean, I had prosthetic on that allows you to see the epithelial tissue in my mouth was about it, you know, the inside of my lip and my eyeball, and that was the extent of it. I looked very much like a fish lady. I kind of had a fin running up my head. But anyway, what else? Well, you know, there have been television episodes of things throughout the years, and I hate to bore you with that list. They rerun late at night, you know, things like MacGyver or Equalizer and that sort of thing. But more currently, if you can call it current, you can rent a movie called Unborn 2, where I massacre little ones with a 9mm. You know, God, I had so much fun. You know, I kind of approach playgrounds and pediatric wings and hospitals and things, killing children, but you see, they're evil children. They're very bad children. They're trying to take over the human race and so forth. Anyways, and I really enjoyed doing that. I felt that this young director, that was a Corman movie. And the one thing about Corman movies is that they don't pay anybody enough to have an attitude. So consequently, the spirit on the set, the environment was very similar to back when I did dinner theater. Where the actors are wearing costumes they made, and you're standing on a set that you constructed and painted, you know, that kind of thing. I felt, you know, in a big budget movie like a Star Trek 3, if you are sitting on a chair, for instance, in the scene, and the chair now needs to be moved an inch because the cinematographer doesn't have you quite in the lens the way he'd like to, you can't move that chair. There's somebody who's a union member whose job it is on that set to move that chair that inch, even though your butt's the closest thing to it, and you can easily just kind of take your hand and reach over and move the chair. But so you know, the lines are very severe as to who does what on the set, and actors are not paid to think, and they're not paid to help, and they're not paid to check out, you know, consistency. You know, excuse me, but in the last take the drink was half gone, and now you've filled it up to 3/4, and it's not going to match if you edit one take to another. You know, actors aren't paid to do those kind of things on big budget movies, but on low budget movies, they don't care who moves the chair or who checks out the drink. If the guy, the guy who the AD doesn't show up, the guy who carries the boom, who holds the mic out like that, he'll AD for the day, be the assistant director. It's like everybody pulls together and chips in. In fact, at one point I remember there wasn't really quite enough blood on this baby that I had just killed, so I reached over and grabbed the fake blood and just, you know, swallowed it. You know, and nobody cared. But on a big budget movie, that would be very taboo. You wouldn't want to do that because you'd be stepping on somebody's toes, and that's why they have a job, so they can do those things. So Unborn 2, fun experience, young director, shot it with a sense of humor, and I really enjoyed it. What else? I'm doing something now called The Dark Breed. You know, you can always tell a low-budget movie by the title, can't you? Dark Breed. With PM Entertainment. They make a lot of these kinds of movies, 12 movies a year, low budget, and the star is Jack Scalia. And I've been working the last 2 weeks on it, and that should probably be rentable in a matter of months, I would think. You know, they get this stuff out there right away. No big screen release, just goes to your local Blockbuster or whatever, and you know, I'll be famous in some town in France or whatever. They release it, and, you know, they distribute it to foreign markets. Yes, sir.
Well, first off, I'd like to say no child is bad enough to kill them.
No child is bad enough to kill them.
Anyway, and what was your...
Hun, it's just movies. You know, we take this way too seriously. Yes.
I tend to take things a little too seriously. Anyway, what was your impression of William Shatner when you worked with him?
What was my impression of William Shatner when I worked with him? You know, it was difficult to have an impression, and I'll tell you why. Because he was unavailable most of the time. You know, one of the reasons you hear actors talk about, you know, on the Johnny Carson show and all those kinds of things, you know, how, or on Jay Leno or Dave Letterman, whatever, about the family, you know, that you've all come to be, is because honestly, there's a lot of downtime on a set. If you ever visit a set and you think that it's, you know, there's something happening every minute, it couldn't be further from the truth. Especially on a big budget movie. You know, it takes about half an hour to sort of set up a shot, rehearse it with the actors, and then all the actors go away and all the people go away because now the lighting people, the crew, the grips and so forth, have to light the shot and set up the effect. And that can take anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours, so now you're kind of just killing time. Or if you haven't really done your homework, you need more time, you rehearse somewhere else with the actors in the scene, that kind of thing. So my point is, there's a lot of downtime, and therefore actors hang out with one another, and they talk, and they tell their life stories, and we get to know each other quite well. And unfortunately, Mr. Shatner wasn't around for that kind of thing because he was always in his trailer. He would come out. Sometimes he wouldn't even come out for the rehearsal. Now that I think of it, the shot would be set up without him being there, and then he would kind of come in maybe minutes before we were about to shoot it, after it's been lit. And we're all in costume and makeup and everything is, you know, almost to the final degree. Then he would come out. So I wish that I would have, you know, could have had conversations with him. I just didn't. He's the person I know least of everyone. Some of them I've gotten to know better on the convention circuit, but of course I've never done a convention with Bill Shatner, so I haven't gotten to know him in that way either. God, I spent a whole day. I'll tell you how kind of droll and dry and dull things can get on a movie set. I spent a whole day. You know the scene at the end of Star Trek 3 where we come in with Spock's body, where we're coming in for the ceremony now, the Faltorpan ceremony that Dame Judith Anderson's character is going to now conduct. And so take after take after take, I happen to be blocked right behind Bill Shatner, and I'm walking in behind him, time and time again. Action cut, action cut, action cut. Because this was a big shot, it required a lot of elements coming together all at once, and so we shot it many times to get it right. And I thought, well, hell, I'm standing right here, inches from the back of his head. Why don't I take this opportunity to figure out for myself where his real hair starts? I mean, really, the back of his head was in my nose all afternoon. And it was a challenge, I'll tell you, because talk about these, you know, the union jobs and people's jobs on set. There was a woman whose job it was to simply take care of his head all day long. So in between every single take, even if he hadn't moved, she would be at his head, at his hair with a pick, you know, making sure every hair was in place. So it was, she was making my job really hard that day. You know, but nevertheless, it was kind of like X-ray vision. I mean, the longer I looked, you know, the hairs and the party, you know, I could see deeper and deeper, you know, by millimeters, just inches. And then finally, oh, I saw it. And it's right about here. Right about there. I mean, I guess where you would imagine it would be, you know, anybody who's losing his hair kind of gets that, you know, that. And the bad thing about it was that once I found it, I couldn't celebrate, really. I sort of had to enjoy the moment all by myself. I was like, you know, kids are really standing around and I can't let on that that's what I've been doing all this time, you know. Oh, God. And then on Star Trek 4, I felt a little more comfortable sort of talking about the things that were on my mind with the other actors. And as you know, in Star Trek 4, I had so little to do before they dumped me on the planet. I had to tell Kirk that his son had died for all of us, and then I had to kind of, you know, wish Spock a good trip, and then I was out of there. And so really, the only scene that I had to rehearse was the one with Bill. And there I stood, and we did the scene, and I came off the rehearsal, down the stairs, and Michelle was the first person that was sort of standing there outside the set for the ship. And I said, you know, Michelle? I said, it's the strangest thing. I said, Bill's not looking at me. I'm doing this scene with him, but he's not looking at me. I said, it's so distracting and disconcerting. And she said, oh, honey, she said, I've been acting to Bill Shatner's nose for years. Her way of solving that situation was to focus on his nose, because you see, if you're looking in someone's eyes and they're looking somewhere else, it can be very distracting to you, because you think, well, what is it over there? What are you looking at? Is there something on my head, or what? It would be catapulted into something altogether, you know, like none of you have ever seen before. Science fiction / horror / fantasy / you know, people would be running from the theaters. So, you know, I don't want to do that to anybody. I don't want to frighten people. At least not like that. So no, you know, it's funny that you say that, because truthfully, Nudity would stop me from doing the part, particularly if I thought it was gratuitous nudity. And what else? And that violence wouldn't. I've done a lot of films where there's a lot of violence, but I always thought it was, you know, it's such a joke. You know what I'm saying? I mean, when there's that much violence in a movie, to me, it's absurd. It's more entertaining than anything else. I don't think that violence in films propagates violence. That's just a personal belief on my part. But no, work begets work, and as long as you know there isn't nudity or women aren't being demeaned, that's another place where I draw the line. I'll do it. I'll accept the job. Yeah. Honey, you're waving at me. You're diarrhea. Oh, I gotta get off the stage. I'm always overdue. One more question, and then this gentleman in the back with the glasses. Hi.
Hello. In the Lord's home, when you encounter Captain Spock on the bridge of the Warlord,
yes.
You hesitated. Is that because you affected married him on Jefferson planet or not?
Wait, I heard you say I hesitated, and is that because why?
You in effect had married Captain Spock when you did on part when he on part.
Oh, when I encountered Spock, I hesitated. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, was that
on the voyage home?
Was that you or is that in the script?
That was me. That was me. Yeah. In fact, that was one. Okay, I'll just tell this one thing and then I'm off, Rick. Does he really expect me to answer? And I remember I sort of just stepped back a little bit and I looked up to his face and I thought, oh my God, he is asking. Oh, I gotta come up with something. And I looked down and I came up again and he goes, that's it. That's what I want. That's what I want at the moment. So in the most lovely, beautiful, tender way, he had tricked me, Robin, into coming up with a moment for Saavik. Kind of the theme of my life these days. Thank you so much for
So check them out, make an offer, and be reasonable. And in about probably...
Start here. Everybody that's over there needs to get behind
you. You need to get back over here.
my body is not anywhere near that. But I thank you for that. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Hi. Step forward so we can get more people. Get your pictures ready. And tell me how to spell your name if it's unusual. Go. Yeah. We like that, Jeff. Hi. No, you're right. It's only 6 and 5'11". Who is this for? What's your first name?
The only thing I don't like about the viewfinder is it's got a lot of pixels on it. That little screen or whatever that's on it. Look at that picture, dude. Look. Good.
Oh, yes, I remember him.
Thank you.
Okay, have a good talk. Oh, you know, sometimes I don't know if I'll see you later because they're going to run me out of here at 5:30.
Yeah, my house in the front and back. No, one thing.
And I promise you I'll okay, you can find it. But all notifications are this one. This one's for the house. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very Say hi to your family. He has no belief in love. Adam, you got it. And where's Adam? He's over.
Who's Steve? Am I? Yep.
Oh, well, tell him hello for me. My pleasure. Thank you for waiting. Hi, how are you? What's your name, darling? Hi, Stephen. Is it with a V or a PH?
Start a new tape. Yeah.
Carolyn, and who's this for?
Yeah.
I
I call him Captain Ted.
So right, Captain Ted?
Sure, right, Captain Ted. He would love that. I really enjoyed your talk. It was great. Well, it's nice to see somebody with so much energy get up there and smile and laugh.
My pleasure. That's what I'm here for. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Never, no, don't do it. Don't do it. Live to regret it. Live to regret
Take the computer or is it?
This one here? This is
Copy.
definitely.
It's on record.
All right.
No.
No?
Oh, I got it. Okay, geez.
There we are.
Are you flying back out tonight?
Yeah, I'm going to New York.
You're going to stop over long.
No, I'm going to drive. We're driving into dark. Yeah. I'm on Star Trek.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, great.
Thank you, appreciate it.
She just got a sewing sheet. Yep, right around the corner. Oh, with you. Okay. You want something?
Oh, no, I'll just go save you some.
I'm bored. Yes,
I don't want anything. I'll just save you some here.
Let's go.
My brother is dead.
You see him on Here Comes the Brides as the evil Aryan symbol. Typecast, I think. Also, you've known him best as Sarek, Mr. Spock's father, Ambassador Sarek, on Star Trek and Star Trek The Next Generation and the movies, ladies and gentlemen. Give a warm Jefferson City applause to Mr. Mark Lenard, ladies and gentlemen.
He thinks he can get away with insulting me with impunity, but that's to show he can't. He's very lucky I didn't give him the Vulcan death pinch. They say it doesn't exist, but you and I know better. What is all this here? Is that for me, or is that a leftover from the last speaker? I was supposed to get the $100 introduction. I leave it up to you to judge for yourself if that's what I got. I think it's 2 bits. Well, I'm going to sign autographs afterwards. I don't know if you've gotten my autograph. I was down there signing because I was expecting to be here at 5 o'clock, but I'll be leaving at 6, so there'll be a full hour afterwards to get autographs if you should care to get any. You're not forced to, you know. I won't force you. How many Klingons does it take to screw in a light bulb? 2, but they have to be very small. 2 in a light bulb, very small. Take your time. Welcome to a very long time. I can wait. How many Klingons does it take to make popcorn? 5. 1 to hold the popcorn and 4 to shake the stove. Not to show that Klingons are not bright, but draw your own conclusions. Why did the Klingon take 18 people with him into the movie theater? Because the sign said 17 and under not admitted. I used to have people have told me, you know, David McDonald, who was the editor of Starlog, said, you know, your jokes getting a little old. And I said, well, so am I. I have a story about my favorites. You know, I like old things. We were driving by the Santa Monica Pier years ago. My daughter and I, she was quite young then, and I said they're going to tear down the pier. And she asked why, and I said, well, people like new things. And she said, yes, but they like old things too. So it runs in the family, I guess. You know, we like old things. A big wave came and washed away a good part of it anyway, so the subject was moved. I used to have these stories, one about Ronald Reagan, you know, because Vulcans are not political. And he announced that he had Alzheimer's recently in a very gracious way. So it seemed a little in bad taste to continue with that. So I've dropped that story, and because it was a very good one, but it really isn't good taste. Vulcans do have some taste. Klingons draw your own conclusions. I played Klingon, so you know I feel that I can make insulting remarks about them. It's the only thing they understand, anyway. But I have a story about Gary Hart. You remember Gary Hart? Yeah, it's been a long time. Gary Hart, to show you that, Vulcans are impartial politically. Anyway, what was Gary Hart's biggest mistake? Glad you asked. What was Gary Hart's biggest mistake? He didn't ask Ted Kennedy to drive her home. Maybe they don't have good taste after all. All right, without much ado, we'll go from frivolous things to serious things. Not too serious. Anybody have a question they'd like to ask me? Maybe I can think of a joke, yes.
After you decide to make a movie, out of the Sarek novel, would you be willing to do it?
If they decide to make a movie of the Sarek novel, would I be willing to do it? Is the Pope Catholic? I would think about it, yeah. Seriously. They approached me in the right way and said, would you care to do it? And I'm like, there is a lot of people have very kind of interesting ideas about Sarek and about his connection with the show and about his connection with the death of Sarek and the death of Gene Roddenberry, and it's all become very kind of mystical. It's an interesting character that I think people say, what do you think, what do you think about, Sarek dying on the show? And what am I going to say? No, I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. But it was, Sarek is a unique character. Of course, I've been in, my main claim to fame, as I've told people constantly, is that I played the three major alien life forms on the show. And I was a question on Jeopardy. I came to New York and I went to, I do voiceovers and some things like that. I went to this casting office and a woman said to me, you were a question on Jeopardy yesterday. And what do you think the question was? It was obviously who, how did they ask them? Something who played the three major alien life forms on Star Trek. And of course the answer was who was Mark Lenard or something. So that's my main, one of my claims to fame. I don't have many others, but that's one of them. Anyway, Sarek is a unique kind of character, and I learned just the other day on the Star Trek cruise. You know, they have Star Trek cruises. Have you heard about them? Well, have any of you been on them? I was the first person to speak Klingonese, or Klingon, on the air. So that's another little distinction that I had. But Sarek was such a interesting kind of character that I think they just, if Roddenberry had lived and so forth, I think they would have done, and he would, retained interest in the show. He had a kind of a tendency to sort of walk away and after the thing was established and let other people sort of take over the menial jobs, and he went on to something else. But if he'd been there, I think they would have made better use of stuff. I think the way that he was killed off was a waste. I was at a, when they called me, I was doing Star Trek 6. That was before they called me. And we were shooting some pictures. They were doing this scene with Kittimer. All right, I'll stop in a minute and you can ask your questions. Leonard Nimoy and me and Kim Cattrall, we had some shots up there. There are shots you see around of all three of us. Anyway, people have said, why don't they bring Leonard Nimoy back to Star Trek: The Next Generation, since the Vulcans lived longer or aged more slowly than anybody else. And I said to him, I understand they tell me that they have a script for you, but you want $1 million and they don't want to pay. First I heard it, what he said. So this was in May or something, early June, and I was kind of living in my in Santa Barbara. I was going to say my wife was going to school then. And I got a call from the studio, and they said that they had something with Sarek. This two-parter in which Leonard Nimoy was going to appear. So much for Vulcan's cruise, obviously. And they sent me, it's a two-parter, they sent me, I was in the first part. So they sent me the script and I read it, and I thought it was really very good. It was one scene, it was a strong scene. It was a little like King Lear, and I thought, oh, that's fun, I liked it. So I never read the second part. I was at a convention somewhere in New York, Albany, Springfield, someplace. And they hooked up a satellite or something, and they showed the first and the second part of Unification. So the first part went, the second part came up, and they said, Sarek is dead. Surprise to me. I had read it, and the minute the show was over, somebody said, what about the twin brother? We were on this cruise that I was telling you about, and we had a panel, and Jimmy Deland and I and George and several others were on it. And somebody asked the question about Sarek, we were going to bring him back, and what did I think about his dying and so forth. And Jimmy said, did anybody see him die? No. Anybody there when he died? No. Well, then you're all right. And it's true. Only the word came. All we have is hearsay. They say they wouldn't allow it in the trial, so anything is possible. But I didn't like it. I don't think they did well with it. I don't care usually particularly, but a lot of people seem to. And if Spock can come back and he's only half Vulcan, think of what Sarek can do. Okay, you had a question there with your little hand?
I was just wondering that when you become such a big part of something that is a great idea, and you have done so many other things besides Star Trek, how do you, what is it that makes that magic that puts everybody together like that, generation after generation?
What you saying?
I just wonder.
You mean the audience or the actors?
Well,
you don't know what you
it's
mean.
there.
This sounds like a kind of a house committee or something. The Senate subcommittee. Nobody knows what anybody's talking about. First of all, they may not have a lot of other things to do. Secondly, Leonard, did you see Leonard Nimoy's book? Has anybody seen it? Yeah, have you or not? I don't know exactly. I read a little bit of it. I'll get to it someday later on. But you know, I read around a little bit of it, and he seems to be very nice about it. He doesn't make, you know, kind of innuendos and nasty remarks about people like some of the others do. It's all kind of pleasant and genteel, and it was, I was really pleasantly surprised. I was, apropos of nothing, I'll just tell you this little story and we'll go on. I was in Springfield, Massachusetts. My daughter, my oldest daughter, was getting her advanced degree, a master's degree in physical education or something of that sort. I don't know, kinesiology. She's a great athlete and personal trainer. She really is a national quality. And we were walking across the campus, nice old green campus, and I was there to kind of help her get settled and all. And there were some railroad tracks on one side of the campus, near the edge of it, and we walked that way, and there was a little yellow hatchback. And it was open, and in this yellow hatchback, there were two young men there, and they had irons and trousers and jackets and grandfather clocks and all this paraphernalia, and they were selling. I don't know if it was hot stuff. Anyway, we stopped to look at it. And one of the fellows said to me, you're an actor. I didn't say it. I get that way sometimes. And Roberta, my daughter, said, he said, I can't remember who you are. And she said, Spock. You know, our kids are here. What can you do with them? We have no control over them anyway. No. So we went and walked on down, and we were walking on the sidewalk on the street where her house was. Pretty soon, a little yellow hatchback pulls up to the curb. One of these guys leans out the window and he said, did you say you're Spock's father or Leonard Nimoy's father? So I'm going to write a book called I Am Not Leonard Nimoy's Father. You know, she said, I am Spock. That's his latest. His earlier book was I Am Not Spock. Now he's Spock. There was a time I saw Leonard Nimoy being interviewed on Tom Snyder's program. I don't know if you know who he is. But it's late night, and he was, you know, trying to be disarming and amusing. He's a nice fellow. Nobody has any really bad things to say about him like they do about, what's his name? And he said, all right, I made a mistake. They said he wanted to get out of it. He wanted to get out of Star Trek, but he kept denying it. Denied it. Everybody was up in arms, you know, because they killed Spock off. Well, they killed him off because he wanted to be killed off. Now he says he never really admits it, but he said, all right, I made a mistake. I made a mistake, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. But people wanted to get out. Jimmy Doohan kept saying it had spoiled his career. He was always, you know, Scotty, and he could have done all kinds of things. You know, he could have done Batman or something. You know. Some wonderful stuff. I must say about Bill, he always hung in there. He stayed on. There's something about, first of all, Star Trek, they kept bringing it back. The cry was, Star Trek lives. That was the reason for all the conventions. There was something about Star Trek that was so wonderful. Everybody, once it got into syndication, it was so popular. People, you know, women used to tell me, I used to come home at 6 o'clock, open a can of beer, put my feet up on the coffee table, and watch Star Trek. Another woman told me that she had a baby, and it was time for its feeding, and Star Trek came on, and she had him send the kid back. Anyway, it was a very popular thing. And it's just been pervasive. It's everywhere in the world. Somebody sent me, some girls came from Japan, and they gave me an aftershave lotion. It was a kind of a square bottle, and the name of it was Vulcon. Vulcon, she thought it was Bulcain, and she thought it was appropriate. Conventions all over the world. I was invited to a convention in South Africa years ago, but I didn't go, partially for political reasons, and the other reason was it's just so far away. And Australia, I'm going, Walter Koenig and I have a play called The Boys in Autumn, which is about Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn in middle age. And we're going to do that in Wales. We might even do it around here. So, you know, they're all over the world. Like a young woman came from Japan. I think she was a teacher or something, and she came up to me and said, in the autograph line, she said, she said, they said you were very handsome. They were right. I said, I thought that Japanese women were supposed to be shy. She said, no more, no more. You even keep up with the changing time. I don't know, Star Trek is a unique thing. I used to ask people why they watch it. For the rest of us, you know, I never got a complete answer. Partly it was the chemistry of the show. The show, people come up to me in the street in New York. I spent a lot of time in New York. In New York, you pass people on the street and you talk to them. In California, you pass them on the freeway. Yeah. And they say, I grew up with Star Trek. It couldn't do worse. You know, popular entertainment. It's a good show. It has good quality. It has some interesting actors. A little sex. A little bit of violence. A little science fiction. Scripts are good things. They could do worse. I'm pleased to be a part of it. And it's for Paramount, and for some people, not for me, it's, what do they call it? The goose that laid the golden egg. You know, it's like coining money. There's a lot of things. You see everything. People are selling all kinds of things. Shatner and Nimoy, the whole crowd are doing well. George wrote a book and got a couple of 100,000 fans. Michelle wrote a book. I don't know what she got. She claims that she got more, but George doesn't think so. It's a funny little world. It's just a very dynamic show. I don't know what keeps us together, and I don't even know what your question was, but it's something like that. We'll make it a little. All right, let's go. How did I get started with Star Trek? I came out to California. I was a New York actor. Well, I lived in New York. I I started in the theater. I used to do something. I came out to California the first time to do a biblical story. I'm very big on biblical and science fiction. And I played one of the Magi, the greatest story ever told. I played one of the Magi called Vulcon, I think. It was the darkest one there. Anyway, I rode a camel. I fell off the camel. Another story. And then I went back to New York, and I was called for something else, another biblical thing, to play Joseph in a series. And well, the series didn't sell, and that's a long story. Somebody else did it, and they promised me to play David. So then I eventually went out to California, and I burned my bridges behind me. I had 2 daughters, one less than a year old, 2 cats, 1 wife. And we headed out there. And we stayed in the kind of apartment hotel in Hollywood, and I got in a car and drove along Sunset Boulevard looking for country. One of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to live in the country. I wanted to work in the movies, and I wanted to play regular guys. You know what happened there. Anyway, we found a place. We went out to Pacific Palisades, where Ronald Reagan was living. We weren't in the same neighborhood, but he was in Pacific Palisades, and there was the ocean. It was as much country as we could get. And I read for a show. I knew a few people and not too many. I was kind of on my own. But, you make more connections and you think that more people know you. And I read for Star Trek, and it was something with a Horta, I think, or anyway, Alfred Ryder played the role. And the director said, well, he said he's a good actor, he's not right for this, so I didn't get it. I read for a Mission Impossible, and this was Desilu Studios, and they produced both shows at the time. So I read for Mission Impossible, partly German. I didn't get that either. The second show I read for was The Romulan Commander. And they got all excited. Roddenberry got all, there's something into this guy, Roddenberry, and he got excited. So I played The Romulan Commander. And then I got another job on Mission Impossible. This time I played a South American. That's what I played, There were good parts for me in those days. And because the Balance of Terror was a good show, Spock was so popular, that they decided to bring his parents onto the show. And they hired Jane Wyatt to play his human mother, and me to play his full Vulcan father. When I got on the set, one person came up to me because, when I played the Romulan Commander, there were 2 separate spaceships, so we never saw each other. We didn't play together. And I liked that role, and they do everything according to the location. So everything was on the spaceship. I was in every scene, and they were in order, and it was wonderful. Besides, I made 3 times as much as I had ever before. It was not that it was much, it wasn't very much. When I came home, my wife said, well, that's a little more like it. So anyway, it was a good movie. When I came back the next year to play Sarek, one person came up to see me and congratulate me on last year's performance and welcome me and so forth. And who do you think that was? I'll give you two guesses. Leonard Nimoy, no. Kid Roddenberry, no. I'll give you one more. Who? Oh, Shatner. Shatner was busy chasing after the little girls with green paint. Nimoy was already a kind of an industry by himself. He was there signing contracts, writing poetry of a sort. And he was busy. The fellow who came up to greet me was E. Kelly. And nobody gets that. Really nice man, very, very kind and thoughtful man. Wonderful man. I still like him. He thinks I say it because he says nice things about me, but it's not true. He was, but he was the only one. Very interesting. And you don't think of it. Nobody did. I don't know why. Anyway, so he came up, and we used to meet. Now I know what it was. Sarek hadn't seen his son for 18 years. They were to meet after all these years, and in the script they tell you, well, you know, they do this and do that, and under Nimoy said, and this is the Vulcan salute, and he showed me how to do it, and so forth. So the shuttlecraft comes in, and it's in the background, and in the foreground is the Enterprise, the doorway of the Enterprise, and standing in the doorway are these two stalwarts, Spock and McCoy, and Captain Kirk. So they're talking, and in the background is Sarek getting off the shuttlecraft and walking down a red carpet or whatever it was, and I'm supposed to arrive at the door at the time they finish this conversation in the foreground and give the Vulcan salute. That's what they call a tracking shot. So it's all one shot and no cuts into it. And this is television, you know, it's expensive. You have to get the timing right and everything of the story. Otherwise, I have to go back and shoot the whole thing again. And, you know, Paramount had taken over by this time, and they were really very covetous of their money. So I had to get the salute right. And, I was thinking about it, the Vulcan salute. Anyway, in the foreground, Spock and McCoy are saying, and McCoy says to Spock, "How do you do that Vulcan salute again?" And Spock shows him how, and this wonderful surgeon, you know, who operated on me and everything, can't seem to get his hands around the Vulcan salute. And he says, "This hurts worse than the uniform," or something of the sort. The joke writer wasn't there that day. And at the end of that, Sarek arrives at the door, raises his hand, gives the Vulcan salute, and says something in Greek. So I was walking down the carpet there, they finished the line, and I approached, and I raised my hand to give the Vulcan salute, and it came out like this. Perfect. I can do it with a good hand. Anyway, the point of this lengthy story is this. If anybody should ask you what Sarek was thinking about when he came back to see his son after 18 years, it was, will I get the Vulcan salute right? Okay. Did I answer your question? That's how I got the job. Who else? Anybody else? Yeah.
You know, being Star Trek movies and what was that? So Deep Space Nine and Voyager.
Yeah. I don't know. Will I be in any of the new Star Trek episodes? Anything is possible. You know, they could bring them back. If I were to test them a little bit, I'm sure they would find something for me. But I don't know. Offhand, I don't know. We'll see. Somebody asked if they would make a movie of Sarek. You know, anything is possible. Yeah.
What about other kind of movies like action or horror or something? Would you ever like take, you know, roles in any?
Would I do those? I don't know, depending on how difficult they were. Would I do action or horror movies? I've done a bunch of those, but I don't, you know, I do Shakespeare or Shaw. In New York, that's what I did. Shakespeare, Shaw, Chekhov. Not him, the other one. Things like that. I told you, I came out to California to play regular guys. Well, I discovered in California that science fiction was Hollywood's Shakespeare. Classic. I'm going to spend, I spent a lot of time in New York, and I'm going to spend a little more in California, and I'll try to do a little more in the movies. I don't care to do that much in television unless it's something really good, because I'm a little more independent now than I used to be. I do voiceovers for commercials and things of that sort, and that has changed my existence. But I'm going to do some writing. I started out as a writer, and it just grew too hard for me. I was a better actor than I was a writer. At least I was more advanced. So that again is, in the future, yeah.
About how long did it take for you to do the voiceover for the CD-ROM, and did you learn anything?
Oh yeah, well, I did the CD-ROM for the, what is it, the beginnings of Star Trek, and the history of the Enterprise, and Kirk, and Spock, and Picard, and so forth. It took a day, I think, the better part of the day. And yeah, I learned what it was all about. I told you, when I did Star Trek, and I was only on 2 originally. And now I've been on many more, in the different incarnations. But I knew nothing about it. And people were going around saying Star Trek lives, and the conventions were starting again, and that was the purpose of the convention, to bring Star Trek back. And in those days, everybody asked very technical, especially young men, they asked very technical questions. So I started to watch them a little bit out of self-preservation. I kind of enjoyed it, but I didn't know anything. In those days, there was huge conventions. We were in Chicago, this convention, at what was then the Stevens Hotel, now the Hilton. And 12,000 people were there. Everybody used to come. Everybody from the show. Of course, they only had the original show, And writers, and artists, and astronauts, UFO people, other UFO people, Hynek and so forth from Northwestern. Everybody was there. And we used to, there were so many of us, we were given 20 minutes to talk each. And I remember standing outside the ballrooms in the hallways to the kitchens. I've been in more hotel kitchens than anybody in the country. And Bill Shatner was pacing up and down because Leonard Nimoy had already talked 25 minutes, and they wondered if he should add another 5 minutes to his talk, too. Anyway, they had this big convention, and who should open it? In a huge ballroom, 5,000 people or something, sitting on the wall, on the walls, standing on the floors, and everywhere, hanging. The old expert opened it, me, and I recognized somebody for the first question. As I said, young man, it was a young man, and they asked kind of technical questions. What he asked me was this: when did logic first come to Vulcan? So I said, I don't know where it came from, but I said, when did logic first come to Vulcan? About the same time that it left the planet Earth. I've been answering questions, you can tell, I've been answering questions like that ever since. The next day, on the front page of the second section of the Chicago Tribune was an article with all these nuts, with ears and costumes and uniforms. And it said an actor named Mark Lenard. Didn't say the Mark Lenard or Mark Lenard, but an actor named Mark Lenard. Opened the show and they quoted me and said everybody chortled and carried on and applauded, but to the rest of us it was incomprehensible. Seems like another age, doesn't it? So Star Trek has become comprehensible, it's become recognized, and it's about to become part of American mythology. So we've come a long way since then. One night at the same convention, it was summertime, balmy evening, took a walk along Michigan Avenue, which was right in front of the hotel, and down below is Lake Michigan. He looked at me and he said to me, "That's right." I've never told Lenard anymore. I'll wait till the right time. And I don't know what it means, but I take it to mean that none of us must get too big for our britches. They're too self-important because nobody knows who we are anyway. Okay, next question. If I can butcher it for you. Okay.
I got a comment to make.
You have a comment?
Yeah, you know that part where you play as the Romulan commander on the movie Balance of Terror?
Yeah?
You did that real good. You
Oh.
almost outsmarted Kirk.
Yeah. You're right. Well, I thought I would. I had the right idea. I wanted to get back home. But that damn underling, whatever his name was, Terminator or whatnot, wouldn't let me do it, you know, and I gave in. But it was a good fight between two equals. It was in many ways, people asked me what my favorite was. In many ways, it was my favorite show. It was my first in Hollywood, first television. I told you I rode the camel before that, but this was my first television role, and it was a good one. It was a good story. It still holds up very well. I still feel very close to it. Yeah. Are you up to something now?
Would we be up to something?
Yeah. No, you can't.
No weapons, I promise. We are diplomats.
You came strolling down here, that ominous look in your face. Is there something I should do, or is it I haven't done? Oh, Vulcan vegetables. Oh, big fan. Oh, thank you. Oh, very nice. I'm glad they didn't decide to refund me and anger. 1 cup of baby carrots, 1 cup of broccoli florets, 1 cup of yellow squash strips, 1 cup beans, green beans, lemon, ½ cup of sliced onions, Italian dressing, garlic butter, boiled carrots, broccoli, squash, and onions until tender, drain water, stir in garlic, and feed it to the cat. Have you ever been at a Vulcan banquet? You know, everything is green and yellow and purple and stuff like that. I very appreciate it. Great ways to have your friends. Okay, thank you. It's appreciated. I've always loved Klingons. Who has a question? Yeah.
Apparently you've read the novel Sarek. Have you read any of the other novels, or do you perform a different genre altogether in your reading?
I read Sarek. I recorded it, you know, that thing, so I had to read it. I had no choice. I never read very many of them because I was writing my own, supposedly. I'm a little slow getting started. I think I started about 1948. I didn't want to be influenced by any of these others, but I don't know what you asked me. I haven't read too many. I know there is one called Ishmael, which has to do with Here Come the Bride. You know, I was in Here Come the Bride also. I played Aaron Stemple, the richest and the nastiest man in town, the meanest man in town. So, typecasting or something of the sort. Anyway, people, I have about 5 copies of it, so anyway, they're both Spock and Aaron Stemple are involved in this thing, but I didn't want to be influenced by that, so I haven't read that either. But I will. My wife has. She found it. She found it interesting. What was I going to say? I was going to... Have you heard the cassettes, the readings, or do you just read books, you don't listen to them? Okay, anybody else have a question? Yeah.
Have you and Walter thought about coming up to Hannibal to play?
Yeah, Walter and I thought about coming up to Hannibal to do the play. We thought about it. We just haven't gotten together to work it out. We're going to do an extended tour, or several extended tours of the show, one of these days, you know. Something always gets in the way. We'd like to. I think it would be a good place for it. Do they have a theater then? Have something? A barn? Yeah. Well, we could do it outdoors or something. It's a very fine play. It's the two guys meet after 40 years, and they're separated when they're about 15, and they don't know each other, and a lot of things have happened in their lives, and it has a lot of humor, and it's quite touching, and it's kind of meaningful. It's a good play. We enjoyed doing it, so we may work on getting it, get a kind of extended tour. And we would love to come wherever we can. We've done it in, one night performances in Denver and in Chicago and in Pennsylvania and of course in Los Angeles a couple of times and places like that. Okay, do you have another question? Yeah. Okay. What was my impression of what? What was my impression of William Shatner? When I worked with him, or working with him? Well, Bill has a, he has a colored reputation, and is well deserved. But he's always been nice to me. We had the scenes that I've done in the movies have mainly been with Bill Shatner and Picard, with Stewart, and they both, in their own ways, are interesting and good actors, and they work very professionally and very hard. They really love acting, and Bill is known for a few other things. But some of the people, like Jimmy Doohan, don't like him and so forth. He's not always nice to the other members of the cast, but he was kind of with me. Some stars of shows are that way, like I used to do Hawaii 5-0 about one a year, and I played everything there, from a Japanese ninja to a Russian Secret Service to a Hawaiian thug, And Jack Lord has a terrible reputation for being unkind to some of the people the local people who work, the crew and local actors. But he was always very nice to me, so I'm not one to judge. We came to the, when we were doing Star Trek III, Leonard Nimoy's first directing, and people wondered if Nimoy and Shatner would get along, because Nimoy was, Shatner was, the star of the show, and Nimoy was his supporting player, but very popular. Well, they got along beautifully. Nimoy was very full of energy and very supportive, very on-spot-like, and Bill, they got along very well. Of course, Bill felt that he had to discuss every scene before we did it. Anyway, we had a meeting to read the script for the first time at Leonard Nimoy's house. Art Bennett was the producer then. And in the end of the script, it says, Sarek brings them all to Vulcon, and they go to see T-Lar, Judith Anderson, and he wants this ceremony done on McCoy to bring Spock's Contra back where it belongs. And T-Lar says this ceremony has not been done since time immemorial, and then only in legend. It is illogical. And in the script it says, Sarek says, "Forgive me, Tivar, my logic fails me where my son is concerned." Well, Bill felt that this was not consistent with Vulcan culture. Say my logic fails me. The whole culture is built on logic. I agreed with him. Harv Bennett, who wrote it, thought it was wonderful. Leonard Nimoy, who had been working with it for 18 months, thought it was fine. So it was Harv Bennett and Leonard Nimoy against Bill Shatner and me. And Leonard Nimoy said, "You know, I do know a little something about the Vulcans." And I said, "Yes, but who taught you everything you know?" I don't know what he answered then. I've forgotten. Anyway, Harv Bennett, the producer, the function of the producer is really a great compromise. And he said, "What if we say this? Instead of my logic fails me," he says, "Forgive me, Tivar, my logic is uncertain where my son is concerned." Well, Bill felt he could live with that, and I did too. So that's the way it went up on the screen, I think. "Forgive me, Tivar," and I said it with a certain pain. "My logic is uncertain where my son is concerned." It takes a little chip in the idea of logic, but doesn't destroy it. This is just to point out what an actor can contribute to a movie if given half a chance. Okay. Does somebody else have a question? Yeah.
William Shatner also has a reputation for being sort of a practical joker. Do you find that to be true
An impractical joker? No, I never did. No, he was concerned. We had the scene, the mind meld scene, and there was some talk about, in Star Trek 3, some talk about having to do it over again because the something about the firelight wasn't right. I've heard him talk about it, but we didn't have to do it anyway, but it was much for beauty. You always wonder if you can recapture it again. I felt we could, but I was pleased we didn't have to do it too. I've heard him say, talk about something like that. We were, when they're meeting in his San Francisco apartment in Star Trek 3, and somebody comes to the door, and it's Sarek, very grim. And Shatner was carrying, he likes to horse around, show up a little bit for the crew. There was nobody else there. But he saw that I meant business, and he began to be very serious. And he plays very well. He's a very good and very dedicated actor. Anyway, in this scene, you'll remember we have a mind meld. And as I said, Nimoy was very, very supportive as a director, and he never said too much. And we were doing the mind meld scene, and the camera was on Bill's eye, 60-foot eye. I got it. They'll turn around and have my eye too. I always wanted a 60-foot eye. And they said, "Oh, his eyes are closed," and they shot my lips instead. I never had any desire to have to shoot 60-foot lips. But I think they intended to do that anyway. Anyway, in the midst of this mind meld, Nimoy says, "Cut!" Bill and I, it was going so well, we looked at each other, we were a little bit shocked. What happened? Scene set. I hadn't played it for about 15 years, so in my enthusiasm in doing the mind meld, what I was doing was this. I was pushing eye down. So that you had a 60-foot bloodshot eye. So I tried to contain myself, do it right, and it seemed to have gone all right since then. Somebody in Joplin yesterday, a young fellow came up, and somebody wanted to do a mind meld, and I said, "Oh, all right." And I told him, "Of course, I'll be swimming around in your mind and in your consciousness. I'll learn everything that you think. everything you wish, every morbid thought that you have. I'll go into your past and your future. And I kept this up for a while. He said, "You still want to do it?" He said, "No." Are serious? Okay. Yeah.
Do you find that when you meet bands on the street or just bump into them in your everyday life, that they expect you to be more like Sarek than you really are?
I don't know what they expect. They treat me, I guess, like I'm Sarek. Yeah. They do. I invited my agents and something. What was Star Trek 3 or Star Trek 4? And we went to this big theater where the premiere was in New York. And she came back, and I was sitting in a special section with some other people and the press and whatnot. And she said, "They revere you. They're so surprised, you know, that people think so much of these characters." I'm a little surprised, too. But, you know, I played, well, I've done a lot of things, but I played Planet of the Apes. I played Urkel, Chief Gorilla in Planet of the Apes. And people said, "Why do you want to do that? You know, you've got all that makeup on and everything, you'll be hidden behind it." So I was in New York. The show was on already. I played it. I played Urkel. And I was in New York walking down 72nd Street on the east side from Fifth Avenue onto Madison. Two young boys were behind me. I go about Madison Avenue, and one of them said to me, "You're Mark Lenard. You play Urkel in Planet of the Apes." "How did you know?" He said, "I recognized you." I hope they answer some question. I don't know what it answers, but it's good. I was the one who, it was a very dynamic, good role. I kind of enjoyed it. I think it as a character role. You know, of course, I studied all about it. It was really, really tough. I don't know that I could do that kind of thing anymore. But you have these appliances on, and they're kind of rubber and other things. And they come out to about here. The mouth comes out here. What did you say? Paychecks, they said. That's true. They're not as big as they might have been, but they haven't gotten too badly for me. They gave me, as I said in one of the calendars, a new family, you know, a second family. And when I meet people, they say, "Oh, you're so familiar, you're an actor. What from?" And I say, "Star Trek." And I say, no. So, could you pronounce it if I told you? No, you couldn't. I agree with you. You're very sensible. Good. That's why I can't tell you.